Amara Vera had imagined this moment 1,000 times, rehearsed in the mirror of her cramped Brooklyn apartment until the words tasted like ash in her mouth. She'd practiced the tilt of her head, the steadiness of her gaze, the way she would let the bracelet slide just slightly from beneath her sleeve at precisely the right moment. Revenge, she'd learned from Aunt Marisol's bitter bedtime stories, required patience and performance. But nothing prepared her for the actual weight of standing in the Cross Mansion's foyer, where the ceiling soared 3 stories high and the air smelled like old money and older secrets. "You okay?" Ethan's hand found the small of her back, warm and reassuring. His touch still sent electricity through her spine, even after 6 months of dating. Especially after 6 months of dating, when guilt had begun threading through her desire like poison through honey. Amara forced a smile, the kind she perfected during her years waiting tables at Mediterranean joints in Queens, while putting herself through community college. Just taking it all in. "Your home is impressive." "It's a mausoleum," Ethan said, and there was genuine distaste in his voice. "I grew up here, but I never felt like I belonged. Too much space, not enough warmth." He squeezed her waist gently. "That's why I got my own place as soon as I turned 21. Much to my mother's horror." The mention of Claudia Cross made Amara's stomach tighten. She'd seen the woman's photograph in business magazines, all sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes, the kind of beauty that cut rather than invited, old money married to new money, creating an empire that stretched across real estate, tech investments, and pharmaceutical patents. "Mr. Ethan, your father is waiting in the West dining room." The voice belonged to a middle-aged woman in a pristine gray uniform who materialized silently beside them. Her face was professionally neutral, but her eyes flickered to Amara with something that might have been curiosity or calculation. "Thanks, Gloria." Ethan turned to Amara, his blue eyes earnest in a way that made her chest ache. "Last chance to run. My family can be a lot." If only he knew. If only he had any idea that she'd engineered their meeting at that charity gala, had laughed at his jokes, and leaned into his kindness with calculated precision, that every coffee date, every late-night conversation about dreams and disappointments had been building toward this moment. Except somewhere along the way, the calculation had become genuine. The performance had turned real. And now Amara stood on the precipice of destroying the first person who'd ever made her feel like she might be worthy of something other than rage. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, and meant it in more ways than one. They walked through hallways lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her entire neighborhood. Amara's heels, borrowed from her roommate, slightly too tight, clicked against marble that gleamed like ice. She caught glimpses of rooms through open doorways. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a sitting room with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum, a conservatory where exotic plants twisted toward skylights. This was the world her mother had been cast out of. This was the comfort Celine Vera had been denied while she'd worked double shifts at the hospital, while she'd stretched every dollar to cover Gabriel's therapy appointments, while cancer had eaten through her body and their meager savings simultaneously. Amara's fingers found a bracelet automatically, tracing the engraved date to the fabric of her sleeve. June 15, 1991. Her mother had worn this bracelet every single day until the very end, even when it had hung loose on her wasted wrist, even when she'd been too weak to lift her hand. "He promised me forever," Celine had whispered in those final weeks, her voice thin as tissue paper. And I was fool enough to believe him. The West dining room was smaller than Amara had expected, though still larger than most people's living rooms. A table of dark would stretch beneath another chandelier. This one more restrained than the foyer's ostentatious crystal monstrosity, but no less expensive. The walls were painted a deep burgundy, and the evening light filtering through tall windows turned everything the color of old wine. Damien Cross stood at the window, his back to them, hands clasped behind him. Even in silhouette, he radiated authority, broad shoulders, perfect posture, the bearing of a man who'd never questioned his right to take up space. "Dad." Ethan's voice held warmth, but also a thread of tension. "I'd like you to meet someone special." Damien turned, and Amara got her first real look at the man who'd shaped her entire existence without ever knowing she existed. He was 63 now, she knew from her research. The years had silvered his temples, but hadn't stooped his spine. His face was distinguished rather than handsome. Strong jaw, hawkish nose, eyes the same startling blue as Ethan's. He wore his wealth casually. An expensive sweater, tailored slacks, a watch that probably cost more than a car. This was the man her mother had loved. This was the man who put his hands on Celine's body, had whispered promises in her ear, had created 2 lives, and then walked away as if there were nothing more than an inconvenient mistake. Dad, this is Amara Vera. Ethan's pride was evident, painful to hear. Amara, my father, Damian Cross. Amara stepped forward, extending her hand with the bracelet-adorned wrist. She watched Damian's face, cataloging every micro-expression. He smiled politely, professionally, the smile of a man who'd shaken 10,000 hands at 10,000 business functions. It's a pleasure to meet. His hand touched hers, and his gaze snagged on the silver bracelet. The smile froze, cracked, shattered. The color drained from Damian Cross's face so quickly that Amara thought he might collapse. His hand, still holding hers, began to tremble. His eyes locked on the engraved date, and she watched him read it, watched recognition slam into him like a physical blow. June 15th, 1991, where his voice came out strangled. He cleared his throat, tried again. Where did you get that bracelet? The room's temperature seemed to drop. Ethan looked between his father and Amara, confusion creasing his features. Dad? What's wrong? But Damian wasn't looking at his son. His entire focus had narrowed to the silver band around Amara's wrist, to the date that had clearly detonated something in his carefully constructed world. Amara felt the moment settle around her like armor. This was it. The culmination of years of grief and rage, of sleeping in a too-small bedroom while Aunt Marisol drank wine and recounted every detail of Celine's suffering, of learning that somewhere in the city, a man lived in unconscionable luxury while her mother had died worrying about hospital bills. She met Damian's eyes, blue like Ethan's, blue like her own, though she'd always told herself her eyes came from her father's side and meant nothing, and spoke clearly. It was my mother's. She wore it every day of her life. Amara paused, let the silence stretch. Her name was Celine Vera. The crystal glasses on the sideboard seemed to hum with tension. Damian's face had gone from pale to gray. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Dad. Ethan's voice held alarm now. Dad, what's happening? Do you need to sit down? Celine. Damian finally managed to speak her name, and it sounded like a prayer or a curse or both. His eyes searched Amara's face now, seeing her properly for the first time, seeing the evidence written in her features, the shape of her jaw, the set of her eyes, details that must have been screaming the truth even before the bracelet confirmed it. Oh, God. Celine Vera. You remember her, then? Amara kept her voice level, but satisfaction burned in her chest. I'm glad. She remembered you, too. Every single day. Ethan was staring at them both now, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. Someone want to tell me what's going on? Dad? Amara? The door to the dining room opened, and a woman entered with the precision of someone who'd been listening in the hallway. Claudia Cross was even more formidable in person than in photographs. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than a semester's tuition, and diamonds glittered at her throat and ears. Her hair was an ash-blonde chignon, without a strand out of place, her makeup flawless, her expression controlled, but her eyes, cold and calculating, went immediately to the bracelet on Amara's wrist, then to her husband's devastated face, and a smile flickered at the corners of her mouth. Not a friendly smile, a knowing one. Well, Claudia said, her voice like honey over razor blades. Isn't this interesting? Damian seemed to shake himself from his stupor. Claudia, this isn't. We need to... Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like. Darling. Claudia moved further into the room, her heels clicking decisively. She looked at Amara with something that might have been approval or contempt. It was hard to tell. You have your mother's bone structure, and your father's eyes, of course. What the hell is everyone talking about? Ethan's voice had risen, frustration bleeding into fear. He looked at Amara. Your father's eyes? What does my mother mean? Amara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment, the revelation she'd been building toward. But looking at Ethan's face, at the dawning hurt and betrayal in his expression, she suddenly wanted to take it all back. Wanted to rewind 6 months and never approach him at that gala. Never let herself fall into the trap of his genuine kindness. "Tell him," Claudia said, settling gracefully into a chair, as if she were about to watch a particularly entertaining play. "Or shall I?" "Claudia, for God's sake," Damien started, but his wife cut him off with a gesture. "No, Damien, they should know the truth. All of it, don't you think?" Her smile was cruel now, undisguised. "It's been long enough." Amara turned to Ethan, and the look on his face nearly broke her. He was already putting it together. She could see the pieces falling into place. See the moment understanding hit him like a wrecking ball. "No," Ethan said, backing up a step. "No, that can't be." "My mother's name was Celine Vera," Amara said, forcing the words out past constriction in her throat. "She met your father in 1990. They were together for almost 2 years. He promised to marry her. He gave her that bracelet as a symbol of that promise." She paused, watching Ethan's face crumble. "And then he left her for your mother, left her pregnant and alone." The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan's eyes were wet now, disbelief warring with the terrible logic of what she was saying. "Pregnant," he repeated numbly. "You're saying I'm his daughter." Amara looked at Damien, who had sunk into a chair, his head in his hands. "Damien Cross is my father, which makes you," Claudia added with vicious satisfaction, "half-siblings." The sound Ethan made was inhuman, a wounded, broken thing that would haunt Amara for the rest of her life. He stared at her like she'd driven a knife into his chest, and in a way, she had. "You knew," he whispered. "When you met me, he couldn't finish, couldn't give voice to the intimacy they'd shared, the future they'd been planning. You knew." "Ethan, don't." He held up a shaking hand. "Don't say my name. Don't, I can't." He turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway. Amara started to follow, but Damien's voice stopped her. "Let him go." He'd raised his head, and his eyes were red-rimmed, aged a decade in minutes. "You got what you came for. You wanted to destroy us, and congratulations, you succeeded. I wanted you to know," Amara said, and her voice shook despite her best efforts. "I wanted you to understand what you did. How many lives you ruined with your selfishness." "Oh, she understands now," Claudia purred, rising from her chair. She approached Amara, circling like a predator. "But here's what you don't understand, dear. I've known about you for 33 years. The admission knocked the air from Amara's lungs. "That's right," Claudia continued, enjoying her shock. "I knew about your mother from the very beginning, knew about the pregnancy. And I made sure Celine Vera understood exactly how the world works. She was nothing, and she would never be anything. Not to this family, not to my husband." Amara's hands clenched into fists. "You destroyed her life. I protected my marriage and my son." Claudia's face was ice. "And I'd do it again." The room spun. Everything Amara thought she'd known, the narrative Aunt Marisol had fed her for years, all of it was more complicated, more vicious than she'd imagined. This wasn't just about Damien's abandonment. Claudia had actively worked to ensure Celine remained in poverty, remained isolated. "How does it feel?" Amara asked softly, looking between them. "To know your empire is built on cruelty?" Damien stood slowly, and for the first time, she saw something other than shock in his face. Guilt. Crushing, undeniable guilt. "You said your mother wore that bracelet every day," he said hoarsely. Past tense. "Celine, is she—" "She died 5 years ago. Cancer." Amara's throat tightened. "She died worrying about bills, in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and despair, while you were probably deciding which vacation home to summer in." A sound escaped Damien then, raw and broken. He reached for the table as if he might fall. "Good," Claudia said coldly. "One less problem." The slap cracked through the air before Amara even realized she'd moved. Her palm connected with Claudia's cheek, snapping the woman's head to the side. For a moment, They all froze, Amara shocked by her own violence. Claudia, a red mark blooming across her perfect skin, Damien staring in disbelief. Then Claudia laughed. Well, you do have cross blood in you after all. Before Amara could respond, before she could process any of the chaos swirling around her, the dining room door burst open again. A woman stood in the doorway, her appearance so sudden and dramatic it seemed almost staged. She was older, perhaps late 50s, with sharp features and calculating eyes. She wore a designer coat despite the warm evening, and her hair was pulled back in a severe style that emphasized the hardness of her expression. Aunt Marisol? Amara stared in confusion. What are you doing here? Marisol Vera stepped into the room, and her smile was terrible to behold. Hello, Damien, she said softly. Did you miss me? The addition of Marisol Vera to the already explosive scene felt like throwing gasoline on a fire. Amara watched her aunt move into the room with a confidence that seemed entirely out of place, given that they were standing in the home of the man Marisol had spent decades teaching Amara to hate. What are you doing here? Amara repeated, her voice sharper now. I didn't tell you I was coming tonight. No, you didn't. Marisol's eyes remained fixed on Damien, who had gone rigid at her appearance. But I've been watching the Cross family for a very long time, waiting for the right moment. Claudia's expression had shifted from smug satisfaction to wariness. Security, she said crisply, reaching for a phone on the sideboard. We have an intruder. Put the phone down, Claudia. Marisol's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Unless you wanted to start talking about things you've worked very hard to keep buried. Like Victor Hale, for instance. Claudia's hand froze. The name hung in the air like a curse. Who the hell is Victor Hale? Amara demanded, looking between the three older adults. The dynamics in the room had shifted again, new current of tension flowing beneath the surface. Damien's lawyer, Marisol said, never taking her eyes off Claudia. And Claudia's lover. Have been for what, 15 years now, Claudia? Or has it been longer? The color that had returned to Damien's face drained away again. He turned to his wife slowly, mechanically. What did she just say? Claudia's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she lifted her chin defiantly. Don't act so wounded, Damien. You lost the right to moral outrage about infidelity about 34 years ago. Victor Hale, Damien repeated, his voice hollow. My attorney, the man who's been handling our family's legal affairs for 2 decades. The same. Marisol moved further into the room, circling like she owned it. The man who's been feeding Claudia information about every business deal, every secret, every vulnerability in your empire. The man who helped her ensure that Celine Vera never got a penny of child support, never could file a paternity claim, never could touch your precious reputation. Amara felt the floor tilting beneath her feet. You knew about this? She asked Marisol. You knew Claudia was actively sabotaging my mother, and you never said anything? Of course I knew. Marisol's smile was bitter. I knew everything, Miss Sabrina. Every dirty little secret this family tried to bury. She finally turned to look at Amara, and there was something in her expression that made Amara's blood run cold. But knowledge is power, and I've been collecting power for a very long time. I don't understand. Amara's head was spinning. Why didn't you help her? Why didn't you expose them? Because, Marisol said softly, I was waiting for the perfect moment. And because, unlike my sainted sister, I understand how the world really works. Celine was weak. She believed in love, in justice, in fairy tales. I believe in leverage. The venom in Marisol's voice when she spoke about Celine, her own sister, made Amara's stomach turn. How can you talk about her like that? She raised me. She loved me. She loved you. Marisol laughed, harsh and ugly. She barely noticed you existed. Amara. Too busy mourning the man who abandoned her. Too busy working herself to death. Too busy with my brother. The words came out before Amara could stop them, pulled from some deep instinct. Gabriel. She was busy with Gabriel. The room went silent again. Marisol's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then something almost like respect. So, You figured that part out. What brother? Damien's voice cracked. What are you talking about? Amara turned to him, and all the anger she'd been holding found a new target. Did you even know my mother was carrying twins? Did you know you abandoned 2 children, not one? The devastation on Damien's face was answer enough. Twins, he whispered. Oh, God. There were 2. Gabriel and Amara, Marisol confirmed, her tone almost conversational now. Born 3 minutes apart. Amara came first, screaming and fighting. Gabriel came quietly, gently, already lost in his own world. She paused. He was autistic, high-functioning, but different enough that Celine couldn't handle both of them alone. Not while working 3 jobs. Not while her health was failing. Where is he? Amara's voice shook. Where's my brother? That, Marisol said, is the real question, isn't it? Before anyone could respond, another voice cut through the tension. He's with me? A man stood in the doorway, tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. He had the kind of face that inspired trust. Warm eyes, an easy smile, the bearing of someone used to putting people at ease. But there was something predatory in the way he surveyed the room, cataloging each person like assets on a balance sheet. Victor, Claudia breathed, and there was something in her voice, relief mixed with apprehension. Victor Hale, Damien said, and his tone was pure ice. What the hell are you doing in my home? Technically, I was invited. Victor's smile widened as he pulled out his phone, showing a text message. By your wife. Though I suspect the circumstances have changed somewhat since she sent that invitation. He stepped fully into the room, and Amara noticed he carried a leather briefcase, the kind lawyers use for important documents. The kind that suggested this visit was about more than a family confrontation. You said my brother is with you. Amara said, her heart hammering. What does that mean? Victor's attention fixed on her with unsettling intensity. You must be Amara. You have your mother's beauty and your father's fire. Gabriel talks about you sometimes. You know, he remembers you, even though you were separated when you were barely 5 years old. He remembers me? Amara's voice cracked. He's alive? Where is he? Safe, Victor said simply. Well, cared for. In a private facility where he receives excellent care. Has for years. A facility you control, Marisol added, her voice tight, that you've been using to ensure certain people behave themselves. Victor's smile never wavered. Gabriel is insurance, you might say. Insurance against anyone in this room making decisions that might be detrimental to my interests. The implication landed like a bomb. You're blackmailing us, Damien said slowly, using my son. Your son. Victor's eyebrows rose. Now you claim him? How convenient. No, Damien, I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm simply protecting a vulnerable young man while ensuring that certain truths remain manageable. Amara lunged forward, but Marisol caught her arm with surprising strength. Where is he? Amara demanded. Tell me where Gabriel is right now. Victor's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes. All in good time, my dear. First, I think we need to have a family meeting. A real one, where everyone's cards are on the table. He set the briefcase on the dining table with a decisive thunk, because there are secrets in this room that make Damien's abandoned children look like minor footnotes. And before this night is over, every single one of them is going to be exposed. Victor Hale opened the briefcase with the deliberate slowness of a man who enjoyed having an audience. Inside, Amara could see stacks of documents, photographs, what looked like USB drives. The accumulated evidence of years, maybe decades, of surveillance and manipulation. Let's start with the basics, Victor said, pulling out a folder. Damien Cross, self-made billionaire. Except you weren't really self-made, were you, Damien? Damien's face hardened. I built my company from the ground up with seed money from questionable sources. Victor laid out several photographs, grainy, dated images of Damien with men in expensive suits, shaking hands outside buildings that looked more like warehouses and offices. The Kozlov family, Russian oligarchs who needed to launder money through American real estate in the mid-90s. You were their golden boy, weren't you? Fresh-faced, ambitious, willing to sign documents without asking too many questions. That's ancient history, Damien said, but his voice lacked conviction. Ancient history that could still destroy you. Victor's smile was razor-thin. The statute of limitations on fraud might have expired, but the court of public opinion? That's forever. Imagine the headlines. Cross-empire built on blood money. Your investors would scatter like roaches when the lights come on. Claudia had gone very still, her earlier smugness evaporating. Victor, what are you doing? What I should have done years ago. He turned to her, and there was no warmth in his gaze despite their alleged affair. Did you really think I cared about you, Claudia? You were useful, a way into the Cross family's inner circle, a source of information, a woman bitter enough about her husband's past that she'd betray him without hesitation. He paused. But you're not nearly as clever as you think you are. The humiliation on Claudia's face would have been satisfying to watch under different circumstances. Now, Amara just felt sick. Everyone in this room had been using everyone else, and somehow Gabriel, innocent, vulnerable Gabriel, had gotten caught in the crossfire. Where's my brother? Amara demanded again. Victor turned to her, and his expression softened slightly. Patience. We'll get there. But first, you need to understand the full scope of what you've walked into. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker. Marisol Vera. Would you like to share your secrets, or shall I? Marisol's face had gone pale, but she lifted her chin defiantly. I have nothing to hide. No. Victor extracted a photograph, this one more recent, showing Marisol entering an upscale building in Manhattan. That's the Cross Industries headquarters, isn't it? Taken 6 months ago, and again 3 months ago, and again last month. He laid out more photos, creating a timeline. You've been meeting with someone in that building. Someone who's been feeding you information about Damien's schedule, his movements, his vulnerabilities. Who? Damien's voice was rough. Your head of security, actually. Victor looked almost amused. Thomas Brennan. Marisol's been paying him handsomely to keep tabs on you. That's how she knew Ethan was bringing Amara here tonight. That's how she's been orchestrating this entire confrontation. Amara stared at her aunt. You set this up? All of it. Not all of it, Marisol said quietly. You really did fall for Ethan on your own. That was the one variable I couldn't control. She met Amara's gaze, and for the first time, there was something like regret in her eyes. I didn't expect you to actually love him. The admission hit harder than Amara expected. Why? Why did you do any of this? Because your mother was a fool, and I wasn't going to let her sacrifice be meaningless. Marisol's voice rose with passion. Celine loved Damien with everything she had, and he destroyed her, threw her away like garbage. I watched her waste away, watched her die poor and broken while he lived in luxury. Someone had to make him pay. By using me? Amara's voice cracked. By teaching me to hate him, by pushing me toward his son, by giving you the tools to bring down his empire. Marisol shot back. I gave you purpose, direction. Without me, you'd be nothing, just another fatherless black girl struggling to survive. The casual cruelty of the statement stole Amara's breath. This was a woman who'd raised her, who'd held her through nightmares about her dying mother, who'd paid for her community college courses. And beneath it all had been this. Calculation, manipulation, a vendetta that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with control. You're sick, Amara whispered. You're all sick. Finally, something we can all agree on. Victor closed one folder and opened another. Now, let's talk about Gabriel. Your twin brother, Amara, the one who was quietly given up to foster care when he was 5 years old, because Celine couldn't handle his needs and Marisol didn't want the burden. That's not true, Marisol said sharply. Celine made that choice. Celine was dying and desperate, and you convinced her it was for the best. Victor's voice was cold. You told her Gabriel would get better care, better therapy, better opportunities. Instead, you made sure he ended up in a facility where I could keep track of him, where I could ensure he'd be dependent, grateful, easily controlled. Amara felt tears burning in her eyes. How long? How long have you had him? Since he was 12. Victor pulled out a photograph, recent, showing a young man in his early 30s, sitting in what looked like a comfortable room. He had Amara's bone structure, Damien's eyes, but there was something gentle and distant in his expression. He was drawing something, his hand moving with careful precision across a sketch pad. Gabriel, Amara breath, touching the photograph with shaking fingers. Her brother, her twin, the piece of herself she'd lost before she was old enough to remember losing it. He's an artist, Victor said, almost gently. Quite talented, actually. He doesn't understand why he can't leave the facility, but he trusts me. I'm the only constant he's had for 20 years. You groomed him. Damien's voice was low, dangerous. You've been holding my son hostage. Your son... Victor's laugh was harsh. You didn't even know he existed until 20 minutes ago. Don't pretend you care about Gabriel's well-being. Where is he? Amara's hands had clenched into fists. Tell me where he is right now, or I swear to God. Or what? Victor's mask of civility cracked, showing the predator beneath. You'll call the police? And tell them what? That I'm providing care for an autistic man who has no other family willing to take him in? That I'm the villain for giving him stability when his own blood abandoned him. The logic was twisted but effective. Amara could see the trap clearly now. Victor had positioned himself as Gabriel's savior, making any attempt to remove Gabriel look like cruelty rather than rescue. What do you want? Damien asked, his voice heavy with defeat. Money? The company? Name your price. Now we're getting somewhere. Victor's smile returned. I want it all, Damien. Your company, your assets, your empire. Sign everything over to me, and Gabriel goes free. Refuse, and I'll make sure he spends the rest of his life in that facility, believing his family abandoned him because they couldn't love someone like him. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Amara looked at Damien, the father she'd come here to destroy, and saw something she hadn't expected to feel: pity. He'd built an empire on compromises and betrayals, and now that empire was about to consume him. But it was Claudia who spoke next, her voice cold and clear. No, she said simply. Everyone turned to stare at her. Excuse me? Victor's eyebrows rose. I said no. Claudia stood, smoothing her suit with hands that barely trembled. You've overplayed your hand, Victor. You think you're the only one with leverage? The only one who's been preparing for this moment. She walked to the sideboard, opened a drawer, and pulled out her own folder. My turn, she said, and her smile was absolutely terrifying. Claudia Cross had spent 34 years in a loveless marriage, building armor from designer clothes and cold calculation. Now, watching her lay out documents on the dining table with surgical precision, Amara realized she'd underestimated the woman entirely. You think you're the puppet master, Victor? Claudia's voice was ice and silk. You're a puppet yourself. You always have been. Victor's confident smile faltered. Claudia, whatever you think you have. Bank records. She placed down the first document, showing transfers from offshore accounts to your personal holdings. Money skimmed from Cross Industries' legal fees over 15 years. Approximately $47 million. Damien inhaled sharply. Victor's jaw tightened. Emails, Claudia continued, laying down printouts. Between you and competitors of Cross Industries. Selling company secrets, insider information about pending deals, proprietary technology specs. Corporate espionage carries serious prison time, doesn't it? You can't prove. I can prove everything. Claudia's eyes glittered. Did you think I was sleeping with you because of your charm, Victor? I was gathering evidence. Every pillow talk confession, every drunken boast, every moment you thought you were manipulating me. I was recording it all. She placed down a small digital recorder, then a USB drive. Audio, video, documentation of every crime you committed while thinking you were untouchable. I've been building this case for 3 years, waiting for the moment you get greedy enough to make your move. She paused. Congratulations. Tonight's that moment. The silence was absolute. Amara watched Victor's face cycle through emotions: shock, rage, calculation, before settling on a cold mask that was somehow more terrifying than his earlier confidence. "If you expose me," he said quietly, "Gabriel suffers. I can make one phone call and have him transferred to a state facility, where the care is minimal and the abuse is—" "You won't make that call." The new voice came from the doorway. Ethan stood there, his face ravaged by tears but his jaw set with determination, and beside him stood a young man who made Amara's heart stop. Gabriel Vera was tall and lean, with the same deep brown skin as Amara, the same sharp cheekbones, the same blue eyes that marked them both as Damien's children. He wore comfortable clothes, jeans, and a soft sweater, and held a sketch pad against his chest like a shield. His gaze moved around the room with careful precision, cataloging faces without quite meeting anyone's eyes. "Gabriel." Amara whispered, and her voice broke on his name. He turned toward her voice, his head tilting slightly. "You sound like her," he said softly, "like the voice of my dreams, the one who sang to me." Amara's legs nearly gave out. She remembered now, fragments of memory she thought were imagination, singing to a baby in the crib next to hers. A small hand reaching through wooden slats to touch her fingers, the way her mother would put them down for naps together, their bodies curled toward each other like puzzle pieces. "How?" Victor's composure had cracked completely. "How did you—" "You're not the only one who can manipulate people," Ethan said, his voice hollow but steady. "While you were all in here playing your twisted games, I was calling facility, told them I was Gabriel's brother, which turns out to be true, and that there was a family emergency. They released him to my custody." "That's kidnapping," Victor snarled. "No," Damien said, finding his voice. "That's a father reclaiming his son. Try to press charges. See how far you get when Claudia's evidence goes public." Victor's hand moved toward his phone, but Marisol spoke up. "Don't bother calling your associates at the facility," she said quietly. "I already did. Told them about the financial irregularities in Gabriel's trust fund, the one Celine set up before she died, that you've been draining for years." She met Victor's furious gaze without flinching. "I may have manipulated my niece, but I never stole from my nephew. That money was supposed to ensure his care, not line your pockets." The net was closing. Victor looked around the room, calculating odds, weighing options. Amara could see the moment he realized he'd lost. "You're all going to regret this," he said, his voice low and venomous. "Every single one of you. The only one with regrets here is you." Claudia pulled out her phone. "I have the FBI on speed dial. They've been very interested in the evidence I've been compiling. One call, Victor. That's all it takes." For a long moment, Victor seemed to consider fighting. Then his shoulders slumped in defeat. "What do you want?" "Gabriel's complete medical records and trust fund information," Damien said immediately. "Documentation releasing him from your facility. And you walk away from Cross Industries entirely. And you don't go to prison," Claudia added. "That's my offer. Take it or spend the next 20 years in a federal facility that makes Gabriel's group home look like the Ritz." Victor's face twisted with impotent rage, but he nodded. "Fine. You'll have everything by morning." "You'll provide it now," Ethan said coldly. "Access your files. Transfer the documents. We're not letting you leave until Gabriel is legally free." The next 30 minutes passed in tense silence as Victor, under Claudia's supervision, logged into various systems and transferred files. Amara couldn't focus on the technical details. Her entire attention was on Gabriel, who had moved to a corner of the room and resumed drawing, his pencil moving with fluid grace across the paper. She approached slowly, carefully, not wanting to startle him. "Gabriel," she said softly, "I'm Amara. I'm your sister, your twin." He didn't look up from his drawing, but he spoke. "I know. You have the same heartbeat frequency as the one I remember from before we were born. 72 beats per minute, slightly elevated due to stress." The clinical precision of the observation made her smile through her tears. "Can I see what you're drawing?" He hesitated, then turned the sketch pad toward her. Amara's breath caught. The drawing showed 2 infants sleeping in a crib, their hands clasped together through the bars. Behind them, a woman's shadow kept watch, protective, loving, eternal. Mama, Gabriel said simply. She loved us. Both of us. Even when they said she had to choose. She did love us, Amara whispered, tears streaming down her face now. She never stopped loving us. For the first time, Gabriel looked directly at her, and the recognition in his eyes was visceral, ancient, profound. I missed you, he said. Every day. I didn't know why, but I missed you. Amara couldn't help herself. She reached for him, and after a moment's hesitation, he let her embrace him. His body was stiff at first, and used a touch, but gradually he relaxed, his arms coming up to hold her tentatively. Behind them, Victor finished the last transfer and stood. We're done here. Not quite. Claudia's voice stopped him at the door. One more thing. You're going to sign a confession. Every crime, every manipulation, every illegal act. Insurance, in case you ever consider coming back. Victor's laugh was bitter. You people deserve each other. He signed the document Claudia produced, his handwriting sharp and angry. Then, without another word, he left. The door closed behind him with finality that echoed through the room. The departure of Victor Hale should have brought relief. But instead, the air in the dining room felt heavier, saturated with truths that couldn't be unsaid and damage that couldn't be undone. Amara held Gabriel for a long moment, memorizing the feel of him. Solid, real, alive, before he gently pulled away, overwhelmed by the sustained contact. Too much, he murmured, returning to his corner and his sketch pad. Too many people, too many feelings. I understand, Amara said softly, though her heart ached with the need to keep touching him, to make up for 28 years of separation in a single night. Ethan stood by the window, his back to the room. The line of his shoulders was rigid, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Amara wanted to go to him, to explain, to apologize, but the gulf between them now felt insurmountable. They'd been lovers yesterday. Today they were siblings. The shift was too violent, too absolute. Damien had collapsed into a chair, his face buried in his hands. The powerful billionaire had been stripped down to his essential self, a man confronting the wreckage of his choices. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed and ancient. I need to know everything, he said hoarsely. Celine, the pregnancy. What happened after I left. Marisol, who had remained silent during Victor's exposure and defeat, moved to the sideboard and poured herself a glass of whiskey without asking permission. She drank half of it in one swallow before speaking. Celine found out she was pregnant 2 weeks after you married Claudia, she said flatly. She saw the wedding announcement in the society pages. She was working double shifts at Mount Sinai Hospital at the time, trying to save money for the photography studio she dreamed of opening. She threw up in the staff bathroom and realized she'd missed her period. Damien flinched as if struck. She called you 17 times, Marisol continued, her voice hard. Left messages. Sent letters. You never responded. I never received. Damien started, but Claudia's cold laugh cut him off. Of course you didn't, his wife said. I made sure that. Every call, every letter, every attempt to reach you went through me first. I wasn't about to let some mistress destroy what I'd worked so hard to build. The casual cruelty of the admission seemed to physically pain Damien. You knew she was pregnant, and you kept it from me? You made your choice when you proposed to me, Claudia shot back. Did you think I'd let you waver? Let guilt pull you back to her? I was pregnant too, Damien. With Ethan, I had just as much right to secure my child's future. Ethan's head snapped around. Don't you dare use me to justify what you did. Don't you dare. Everything I did was for you, Claudia said, but there was a desperate edge to her voice now. To give you a stable home, a secure future, a father who was present instead of torn between two families. You gave me a lie, Ethan said quietly. My entire life has been a lie. Marisol drained her glass and poured another. Celine carried the twins alone. Worked until she went into labor at the hospital. Convenient, at least. Amara came first, screaming like she was furious at the world for bringing her into it. Gabriel came 3 minutes later, so quiet the doctors thought something was wrong. She paused. staring into her whiskey as if seeing the past reflected in its amber depths. They were beautiful, perfect, and Celine looked at them and cried, because she knew, even then she knew, that love wouldn't be enough. She was 26 years old, abandoned, working for barely above minimum wage, with 2 newborns and no support system except me. Why didn't you help her more? Amara's voice was thick with suppressed emotion. You clearly had resources. You've been paying Damien's head of security, manipulating events. Where was that money when my mother was dying? Marisol's face hardened. I did help her. I paid for the apartment in Queens, covered bills when she couldn't bought clothes and formula. But Celine had pride, stupid pride. She didn't want charity. She wanted the man she loved to keep his promises. Amara finished. That's not stupid. That's human. That's weakness, Marisol corrected coldly. And it killed her just as surely as the cancer did. The silence that followed was broken by Gabriel's soft voice from his corner. Mama sang to us, he said, his pencil never stopping its movement across the paper. Even when she was tired, even when she was sad. She sang a song about birds and freedom. I still hear it sometimes when I'm trying to sleep. Amara remembered that song. The melody was buried deep in her childhood memory, surfacing now like a ghost. Their mother's voice, rough from exhaustion but tender, singing them into dreams. What happened? Damien asked, and his voice cracked. When did it become too much? When did you? He looked at Gabriel, unable to finish the question. When Gabriel was diagnosed at 3, Marisol said, autism spectrum disorder. High functioning, but he needed therapies, specialists, interventions that insurance barely covered and Celine couldn't afford. She was working 3 jobs by then. The hospital, weekend shifts at a restaurant, overnight cleaning at an office building. She barely slept, barely ate. Amara closed her eyes, remembering fragments. Her mother's perpetual exhaustion, the way she would fall asleep, sitting up at the kitchen table. The times Amara, barely 5 years old, had tried to make sandwiches for herself and Gabriel because Mama was too tired to cook. I was 5 when he left, Amara said. I remember waking up one morning, his crib was empty. Mama said he'd gone to a special school where he could learn better. She said he'd come back when he was older. She believed that. Marisol said quietly, I convinced her it was temporary, that the state facility would provide therapies she couldn't afford, that Gabriel would thrive there, that she could bring him home once she was more stable financially. But you never intended for that to happen, Amara said, understanding dawning with sickening clarity. You wanted him gone. Marisol's silence was confirmation enough. Why? The word tore from Amara's throat. He was your nephew, your blood. How could you? Because Celine was drowning. Marisol's composure finally cracked, passion bleeding through. Because she was killing herself trying to care for both of you, and I knew that she wouldn't survive if something didn't change. So I made a choice. I saved one child by sacrificing the other. That wasn't your choice to make, Damien said, and there was raw pain in his voice. No, it was yours. Marisol shot back viciously. You're the one who should have been there. You're the one who abandoned them. Don't you dare judge me for cleaning up your mess. Damien stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He moved toward Gabriel slowly, as if approaching something fragile and wild. Gabriel tensed but didn't flee, his eyes tracking Damien's approach with careful attention. Gabriel, Damien said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm your father. I didn't know you existed. I swear to you, if I had known. You would have done what? Gabriel interrupted, still not looking directly at him. Come to visit? Sent money? Taken us away from Mama? He shook his head. Mama said my father was a ghost. Someone who existed, but couldn't touch us. She said ghosts can't hurt you if you don't believe in them. The words hit Damien like physical blows. He sank down onto the floor, sitting cross-legged in front of Gabriel's chair, putting himself at a lower level. It was an instinctive gesture of submission, of making himself less threatening. Your mother was right, Damien said, tears streaming down his face now. I've been a ghost. I've been absent from your life, from Amara's life, Because I was a coward. I chose comfort over courage, wealth over love, and I've regretted it every day since I saw that bracelet. You regretted it before that, Claudia said softly, and for the first time, there was something other than coldness in her voice. Almost like empathy. Almost. You said her name in your sleep. For years, Damien. You kept a photograph of her hidden in your office desk. You went to hospital where she worked on the anniversary of that date on the bracelet, every year, just to catch a glimpse of her through the windows. Amara stared at Claudia. How do you know that? Because I followed him. Claudia's laugh was bitter. Every June 15th, like clockwork, my husband would disappear for a few hours. So I hired a private investigator, watched him pine for a dead relationship, while I raised a son alone in that mausoleum of a house. She's not dead yet in those memories. Ethan sat quietly from the window. He'd turned to face the room now, his expression unreadable. That's the thing about the past. It stays alive in our heads long after it dies in reality. Celine died 5 years ago, Marisol said. The cancer was aggressive. By the time they caught it, there was nothing to be done. She lasted 6 months after diagnosis. I would have paid for treatment, Damien said desperately. Any treatment, anywhere in the world. She didn't want your money, Amara cut in. Even at the end, even when she was in so much pain she couldn't stand it, she refused to let me contact you. She said she'd rather die poor and proud than live rich and broken. That sounds like her, Damien whispered. Stubborn, fierce, beautiful even in her refusal to compromise. You don't get to romanticize her suffering, Amara said, her voice shaking with rage. You don't get to turn her poverty into some noble tragedy. She died in agony, worrying about me, calling out for Gabriel in her morphine dreams, asking why her babies had been taken from her. That's not beautiful. That's horror. The room fell silent, except for the scratch of Gabriel's pencil on paper. He'd been drawing throughout the entire conversation, his focus never wavering, creating art from the chaos surrounding him. Finally, he held up the sketch pad. The drawing showed a family fractured into pieces, a woman's face split into fragments, children separated by jagged lines, a man's silhouette turned away from it all. But woven through the brokenness were threads of silver, connecting the pieces, suggesting the possibility of reconstruction. We're all broken, Gabriel said simply. But broken things can be fixed. Mama taught me that. She used to fix my toys with glue and patience. She said anything can be repaired if you care enough to try. The wisdom in his words, delivered with such gentle certainty, seemed to strip away everyone's defenses. Amara saw it happen in real time. Damien's walls crumbling, Claudia's mask slipping, even Marisol's hardness softening at the edges. Can we be fixed? Ethan asked, his voice raw. He was looking at Amara now, finally meeting her eyes. After everything that's been broken, Amara thought about the question, about the love she'd felt for him, still felt for him, if she was honest, though it had transformed into something different, something that hurt in new ways, about the revenge that had brought her here and the family she discovered instead, about Gabriel, drawing their fractured reality with hope threaded through its cracks. I don't know, she admitted, but maybe we can try. The Cross Mansion felt different as the night deepened, as if the revelations had altered its very architecture. Claudia had ordered coffee and food brought in, a surprising gesture of hospitality that suggested even she recognized they were in this together now, for better or worse. Gloria, the housekeeper, appeared with a silver tray laden with sandwiches, fruit, and a carafe of coffee. Her eyes widened slightly at the scene. Gabriel in the corner with his art supplies, Damien sitting on the floor, Marisol drinking whiskey like water, Ethan by the window, and Amara standing between them all like a bridge no one knew how to cross. Will there be anything else, Mrs. Cross? Gloria asked, her voice carefully neutral. Privacy, Claudia said simply, and hold all calls. No interruptions for the rest of the night, no matter who calls or why. Gloria nodded and retreated, closing the doors behind her with a soft click that felt like sealing them all inside a pressure cooker. Gabriel was the first to move toward the food, his movements careful and deliberate. He selected a sandwich, examined it thoroughly, then took a small bite, Amara watched him, cataloging his mannerisms. The way he smelled the food first, the precise way he chewed, the slight rocking motion he made when processing information. "Does he have dietary restrictions?" she asked Marisol, hating that she had to ask, hating that she didn't know these basic facts about her own twin. "He's particular about textures," Marisol answered, and there was something almost tender in her voice. "Nothing too soft or too crunchy. He likes things that have structural integrity. His words, not mine. And he won't eat anything red. Says red foods feel angry." Gabriel nodded without looking up from his sandwich. Red is a loud color. It tastes like shouting. The statement was so Gabriel, so uniquely his way of experiencing the world, that Amara felt tears prick her eyes again. She'd lost so much time with him. 28 years of inside jokes and shared experiences, of learning his language and letting him learn hers. Ethan had moved to the food as well, though he seemed to be going through the motions rather than actually eating. He poured coffee with mechanical precision, his hands steady despite everything. "We need to decide what happens next," he said, his voice flat and organizational. Amara recognized it as his coping mechanism, retreating into logistics when emotions became too overwhelming. Gabriel needs proper care, a real home. The legal situation with Victor needs to be monitored to ensure he doesn't retaliate. And there's the matter of... He trailed off, unable or unwilling to articulate the matter of them, of what they'd been and what they could never be now. "Gabriel will stay here," Damien said, standing finally, his knees cracking from sitting on the floor. "This house has more rooms than we know what to do with. He'll have space, privacy, whatever accommodations he needs." "He will not," Amara said immediately. "I'm not leaving him in a house with people he doesn't know, surrounded by the family that abandoned him. I'm his father." "You're a stranger," Amara interrupted. "A biological connection doesn't make you family. I'm his sister, his twin. He's coming with me." "To where?" Claudia's question was pointed but not unkind. "Your apartment in Brooklyn? The 2-bedroom you share with a roommate? Be realistic, Amara. What can you offer him that we can't?" The truth of it stung, but Amara refused to back down. "I can offer him love. Consistency. Someone who puts his needs first instead of treating him like a chess piece in your family's power games." "I want to see Mama's grave," Gabriel said suddenly, his voice cutting through the argument. Everyone turned to look at him. He'd finished his sandwich and was now arranging the fruit on his plate in a pattern: grapes, strawberries, melon chunks, each color separated. "I never got to say goodbye. Victor said she was gone, but he never took me to see where she was buried. I need to see it. I need to know where she is." The simple request shattered something in the room. Amara saw Damien's face crumble, saw Marisol look away, saw even Claudia's expression soften. "I'll take you," Amara said immediately. "Tomorrow if you want, or whenever you're ready." "I'll come too," Damien said quietly, "if you'll allow it. I need to apologize to her, even if she can't hear it." Gabriel considered this, his head tilting as he processed. She can hear it. Dead people listen differently than alive people, but they still listen. Mama told me that once when I asked where my goldfish went when it died. She said it was listening to the water, even though it couldn't swim anymore. The childlike wisdom mixed with adult comprehension was quintessentially Gabriel. Amara felt a surge of protective love, so strong it nearly knocked her over. "We'll all go," Ethan said, and there was something decided in his voice. "As a family, broken and strange and nothing like what any of us planned, but family nonetheless." "Family," Gabriel repeated, testing the word. "I like that word. It sounds round. Complete." Marisol set down her glass with a sharp click. "Before we all join hands and sing, there's something else that needs to be addressed." She looked at Amara, and there was challenge in her gaze. "You came here for revenge, to destroy Damien, to make him pay for what he did to your mother. Are we pretending that's changed now that you've met Gabriel? Now that Ethan's shown you his puppy dog eyes?" "Marisol," Damien started, but Amara held up a hand. "No, she's right." Amara met her aunt's gaze steadily. "I did come here for revenge. I spent years hating Damien Cross, build him up in my mind as this monster who destroyed my mother's life. I planned to seduce his son, worm my way into his family, and burn his empire to the ground. Ethan flinched, but Amara pressed on. But the truth is more complicated than the story you fed me, Aunt Marisol. Yes, Damien abandoned my mother. Yes, he made a cowardly choice that had devastating consequences. But Claudia manipulated events to ensure they never reconnected. Victor exploited Gabriel for years. And you, Amara's voice hardened, you gave away my brother and lied to my mother about it. You poisoned me with your own bitterness and used my grief as a weapon. Marisol's face paled. I did what I thought was necessary. You did what satisfied your own need for vengeance, Amara corrected, because you wanted Damien for yourself. Because you were jealous of Celine's capacity to love someone so completely. Because you're bitter and cruel, and you couldn't stand to see anyone else find happiness when you couldn't. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Marisol opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked uncertain. Is that true? Damien asked quietly. Did you have feelings for me? Marisol's laugh was ragged. Feelings? I was obsessed with you. From the moment Celine brought you home to meet the family. I wanted you. I was older, more sophisticated, more ambitious. But you only had eyes for her. Sweet, naive Celine with her dreams of art and her stupid belief in true love. She poured another drink with shaking hands. I thought when you left her, I'd have a chance. I made myself available, let you know through mutual friends that I was interested. But you married Claudia instead. Chose another woman who wasn't me. So yes, I fed Amara stories about your cruelty. Yes, I encourage your hatred. Because if I couldn't have you, I could at least destroy you. The confession was ugly in its honesty. Amara felt sick, thinking of all the years she'd absorbed Marisol's poison, letting it shape her worldview. Get out, she said quietly. Marisol blinked. What? Get out of this house. Get out of my life. You don't get to be part of whatever we build from here. Amara, I raised you. You manipulated me, Amara corrected, her voice steel. You used my mother's death and my grief to fuel your own vendetta. You gave away my brother and let me believe he was dead. You're not family. You're a poison I'm done drinking. For a moment, Marisol looked like she might argue. Then something in her seemed to deflate. She nodded once, sharply, and set down her glass. Fine, she said, but you will regret this. You'll realize I was the only one who actually cared about protecting you from these people. You cared about protecting yourself, Claudia said, and there was something almost like respect in her voice. At least own your selfishness, honestly. That's the one thing I can respect. Marisol looked at each of them in turn, Damien, Claudia, Ethan, Amara, and finally Gabriel, who was drawing again, seemingly oblivious to the drama. I hope you all get what you deserve, she said and walked out. The door closed behind her with finality. Gabriel looked up from his drawing. That woman had a yellow aura, he said matter-of-factly. Yellow like old bruises, like jealousy and sickness. I'm glad she's gone. The air feels cleaner now. Despite everything, Amara smiled. Yeah, she said softly. It does. The morning came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Amara had dozed fitfully in one of the mansion's guest rooms, a space larger than her entire Brooklyn apartment, decorated in shades of cream and gold that felt alien against her skin. She'd insisted Gabriel take the room next to hers, and she'd kept the connecting door open all night, listening to his breathing, reassuring herself that he was real and safe. When dawn broke through the heavy curtains, she found Gabriel already awake, sitting by the window with a sketch pad. He'd drawn the sunrise in layers of color. Purples bleeding into pinks, oranges emerging from reds, the whole sky transforming before their eyes. You couldn't sleep either? Amara asked softly, not wanting to startle him. Sleep is when my brain turns off, Gabriel said, his eyes tracking the changing light. But my brain doesn't like turning off. Too many thoughts waiting to come back. So I draw instead. Drawing is like organized thinking. Amara moved to sit near him, careful to leave space between them. She was learning his boundaries, the way he needed distance to feel safe. "What are you thinking about?" "Mama's grave," he said simply. "I've been thinking about what I'll say to her. I've been practicing in my head, but the words keep changing shape. They feel different depending on how I arrange them." "You don't have to have the perfect words," Amara said gently. "Whatever you say will be enough." Gabriel considered this, his pencil tapping against the sketch pad in a rhythm that seemed meaningful to him. "When I was little, before they took me away, Mama used to say I was her quiet storm. She said I had weather inside me that other people couldn't see. Do you think she still knows about my weather?" The question broke Amara's heart and mended it simultaneously. "I think wherever she is, she knows everything about you. Your weather, your drawings, your thoughts about colors having feelings. She knows it all." "Good," Gabriel said, and returned to his drawing. "Then I'll tell her about the angry red foods and the lonely blue nights and the happy yellow mornings. She'll understand." A knock at the connecting door interrupted them. Ethan stood there, looking like he'd slept even less than Amara had. His hair was disheveled, his eyes shadowed, but he dressed carefully, dark jeans, a simple black sweater, as if preparing for a funeral. "The cars are ready," he said quietly. "Whenever you both are." Amara nodded. "Give us 20 minutes. Ethan hesitated in the doorway, his gaze lingering on her face. "Amara, we need to talk. About everything." "I know," she said and meant it. "But not today. Today belongs to Gabriel and Mama." He nodded, understanding, and retreated. Gabriel closed the sketch pad. "He loves you," he observed, his voice matter of fact. "His aura reaches toward you like plants reach toward sunlight, but it's confused now. Purple and green mixed together, bruised and growing at the same time." "You can see auras?" Amara asked, startled. "Not see," Gabriel corrected. "Feel. People have colors that move around them. Emotions make the colors change. His colors are very loud around you." Amara didn't know what to say to that, so she simply nodded. "Let's get ready." The cemetery was in Queens, not far from where Amara had grown up. It was a modest place, no elaborate monuments or sprawling family plots, just simple headstones marking simple lives. Celine Vera's grave was under an oak tree, exactly where Amara had requested it be. She wanted her mother to have shade, to have something living nearby. 3 cars had made the journey from the Cross Mansion. Damien and Claudia rode in one, maintaining a careful distance from each other. Ethan drove another, with Amara and Gabriel as passengers. The 3rd car carried Gloria and a security detail that Claudia had insisted upon, though they remained at a respectful distance. Gabriel emerged from the car slowly, his eyes scanning the cemetery with intense focus. Amara watched him take in rows of stones, the flowering trees, the birds singing in the morning air. His face was difficult to read, but his hands were clenched tight around his sketch pad. "Which one is hers?" he asked, his voice smaller than usual. Amara took his hand, tentatively, ready to let go if he pulled away, and led him down a path lined with wildflowers. Gabriel's grip tightened around her fingers, and she felt something unlock in her chest. Permission, trust, connection. The headstone was simple gray granite with elegant engraving. Celine Marie VYRA 1965, the 2020 beloved mother artist of life. Below the epitaph, Amara had added a small engraving of a bird in flight, a reference to the song Gabriel had mentioned, the lullaby their mother sang. Gabriel sank to his knees in front of the grave, his free hand reaching out to trace the letters of her name. His lips moved silently, forming words only he and perhaps Celine could hear. Damien approached from behind, his steps heavy with dread and grief. He stopped several feet back, as if afraid to get too close, as if proximity might burn him with the weight of his failures. "Celine," he said, and his voice cracked immediately. I don't know how to begin apologizing for abandoning you, for leaving our children, for being too much of a coward to fight for what we had." He knelt as well, his expensive slacks pressing into grass and dirt. Tears streamed down his face unchecked. "I loved you," he continued. "I loved you more than I've loved anything in my life, and I was too afraid of what that love would cost me. Too afraid of disappointing my family, of losing their approval, of being poor or struggling or ordinary. He laughed bitterly. I got everything I thought I wanted: money, power, respect. And it was all worthless because I lost you. Claudia stood apart, her arms crossed over her chest. She didn't approach the grave, but neither did she turn away. Her face was unreadable behind expensive sunglasses. Ethan stayed near Amara, close enough that she could feel his presence but not touching. The careful distance between them felt like grief itself. Wanted to reach out, but knowing the shape of what they'd had no longer fit. Gabriel had begun to cry silently, tears rolling down his face as he traced his mother's name over and over. I remember you, he whispered. I remember your voice and your hands and the way you smelled like honey in hospitals. I remember that you loved me even though my brain worked different. I remember. Amara knelt beside him, her own tears falling freely. She was so proud of you, Gabriel. Even after you were gone, she kept all your drawings, every single one from the facility that they'd send her. She had them in a box under her bed, and sometimes when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her cry while looking at them. I drew them for her, Gabriel said. Every picture was a letter I couldn't write. Every color was a word I couldn't say. Did she know that? She knew. Amara assured him. She knew every single one was you telling her you loved her. They sat there together, twins reunited at their mother's grave, letting grief move through them in waves. Behind them, Damien wept for the woman he'd loved and lost. Ethan stood silent witness to a family's fracturing and tentative reformation. And Claudia, cold, calculating Claudia, removed her sunglasses and wiped away a single tear. Finally, Gabriel opened his sketch pad. He brought colored pencils, and he began to draw directly on the grass in front of the headstone, a temporary memorial that would fade with time but felt essential in the moment. He drew birds and flowers and two small figures holding hands. He drew a woman's silhouette watching over them. He drew connection and loss and love persisting beyond death. When he finished, he placed his palm flat against the earth and closed his eyes. I found my way back to you, Mama, he said softly. I found Amara. I found the father you told me about. I found family. You said broken things could be fixed, and I think maybe we're starting to fix. A breeze moved through the cemetery, rustling leaves and carrying the scent of flowers. Gabriel smiled slightly, as if receiving an answer only he could hear. She says she's proud of us, he announced. She says love is louder than death, and we're proving her right. No one questioned whether he'd actually heard anything. In that moment, it didn't matter if it was real or imagination or the desperate hope of a wounded heart. It was what they all needed to hear. They stayed until the sun climbed higher, until the morning's coolness gave way to warmth. They took turns speaking to Celine, sharing regrets and memories, making promises and asking forgiveness. Even Claudia approached eventually, standing at the foot of the grave. I'm not sorry for protecting my family, she said quietly, but I'm sorry for the cruelty I employed to do it. You deserve better than how I treated you. It wasn't much, but it was something, a crack in marble, allowing light through. As they prepared to leave, Gabriel pulled a drawing from his sketch pad, the sunrise he created that morning, and placed on the grave, weighted down with a smooth stone. So she knows I saw something beautiful today, he explained. So she knows I'm still finding beauty, even though she's not here to show it to me anymore. Amara took his hand again, and this time he held on without hesitation. They walked back to the cars together, leaving Celine under the oak tree with birds singing overhead and her son's art decorating her rest. It wasn't closure. Grief never really closed. But it was something, a beginning point for whatever came next. The days following the cemetery visit fell into an uneasy rhythm. Gabriel had agreed to stay at the Cross Mansion temporarily, just until we figured things out, as Amara had phrased it, and the house had transformed around his presence. Damien had hired specialists, an occupational therapist who understood sensory needs, a psychologist who specialized in adult autism, even an art instructor who came twice a week to work with Gabriel on technique, while respecting his unique vision. Amara had taken a leave of absence from her job at the restaurant, using savings she'd been hoarding for years. She stayed in the guest room next to Gabriel's, a semi-permanent fixture in the Cross household. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd come to destroy this family. And now she was living among them, eating at their table, existing in the strange liminal space between revenge and reconciliation. Ethan had moved back into mansion as well, claiming he wanted to get to know his brother. But Amara knew, they both knew, that he was there for her too. They circled each other like binary stars, pulled together by gravity but unable to touch without catastrophic collision. It was Claudia, surprisingly, who engineered the conversation they'd been avoiding. She found Amara in the library one afternoon, curled in a leather chair with a book she wasn't actually reading. Outside, through the tall windows, Gabriel could be seen in the garden with his art instructor, painting the roses with meticulous attention to their layered petals. "We need to talk," Claudia said without preamble, settling into the opposite chair with the grace of someone who'd never questioned her right to any space she occupied. Amara closed her book. About what happens next, about the future of this family, such as it is. Claudia crossed her legs, her posture perfect. "You and Ethan are avoiding each other. Gabriel is settling in but has no legal guardian status established. Damien is drowning in guilt and making increasingly irrational business decisions because he's emotionally compromised. And She paused, something flickering across her usually impassive face. "I am tired." The admission was so unexpected that Amara could only stare. Tired of what? All of it. Claudia gestured vaguely, encompassing the mansion, the family, perhaps her entire life. Tired of pretending this marriage is anything other than a business arrangement that's outlived its usefulness. Tired of watching my son suffer because he fell in love with the wrong woman, or rather, the right woman at the wrong time. Tired of maintaining appearances when everyone in this house knows we're all desperately broken. Amara set her book aside entirely. This was the most honest she'd ever heard Claudia speak. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want a divorce." Claudia said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing stock portfolios. "I've wanted one for years, frankly. But there was Ethan to consider, the company to protect, appearances to maintain. Now everything's already shattered. Might as well sweep up the pieces properly. Does Damien know?" "We discussed it last night. He was relieved, actually." A ghost of a smile touched Claudia's lips. 34 years we've been married, and the prospect of ending it made him lighter than I've seen him in decades. That should tell you something about the quality of our union. Amara didn't know what to say. She'd come here expecting to find a villain in Claudia, had found one in many ways. But the woman sitting across from her now seemed more complicated than that. Calculating, yes. Cold, certainly. But also trapped in a life she'd built and then realized she didn't want. "Where will you go?" "I have options." Claudia waved a dismissive hand. "Properties in Europe. Investments that are solely mine. I'll be more than comfortable. Victor may be in federal prison soon thanks to my testimony, but I was already planning my exit before his schemes unraveled. I'm not the type to go down with a sinking ship. And Ethan? Claudia's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Ethan is the one thing I didn't calculate correctly. I thought I could control his happiness, curate his life into something perfect and painless. Instead, I raise a man with a conscience and a heart, probably despite my best efforts rather than because of them. She leaned forward slightly. He loves you, Amara, genuinely, devastatingly, and it's destroying him. Amara's throat tightened. We can't. I know what you are to each other legally. Claudia cut her off. Half-siblings. Forbidden. Impossible. But I've been thinking about that, and I have a proposition. What kind of proposition? Claudia pulled out her phone, tapped through several screens, and turned it to show Amara a document. DNA test results. Ethan's and yours. I had them run privately. Don't look at me like that. I had access to both your medical records through various means. Amara stared at the screen, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The genetic markers, the percentage of shared DNA, the conclusion typed in clinical language at the bottom. That's not possible, she whispered. Oh, it's very possible. Claudia's smile was sharp. You and Ethan share approximately 25% of your DNA, which makes you related, yes, but not in the way we all assumed. I don't understand. You're not Damien's daughter. Amara. Claudia let the words detonate in the space between them. You never were. The library seemed to tilt. Amara gripped the arms of her chair, her knuckles going white. That's impossible. The bracelet, the timing, my mother. Your mother was with Damien. Yes, but she was also with someone else around the same time. Claudia pulled up another document. This one appeared to be a private investigator's report, dated from months ago. When you started appearing in Ethan's life, I did my due diligence. Investigated your background, your mother's history, every detail I could find. And I found something interesting. She swiped to a photograph, an old one, slightly faded. It showed Celine Vera standing with a man, not Damien. This man was darker skinned, with kind eyes and an easy smile. They were at some kind of community center, both wearing volunteer badges. His name was Marcus Henderson. He worked at the community center in Harlem, where your mother volunteered on weekends. They had a brief relationship, just a few weeks, right around the time she was seeing Damien. Claudia's voice was matter-of-fact, delivering earth-shattering information like a weather report. Marcus died in a car accident in 1992, about a year after you were born. No family to speak of, no one to notice or care that he might have left a child behind. Amara couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, her entire identity cracking at its foundation. But Gabriel is Damien's son. The DNA proves it. Fraternal twins can have different fathers. Amara, it's rare but documented. When your mother was pregnant, she was carrying 2 babies with 2 different biological fathers. Heteropaternal superfecundation. Amara whispered, remembering the term from a biology class years ago. It had seemed like a medical curiosity, something that happened to other people in textbook case studies. Exactly. Claudia sat back, watching Amara process. Your mother probably never knew. She assumed Damien was the father of both of you because the timing made sense. She had no reason to get paternity tests. She knew she'd been with Damien. She trusted her own timeline. Why didn't you tell anyone? Amara's voice was hollow. Why keep this secret? Because it was useful. Claudia's honesty was brutal. As long as everyone believed you were Damien's daughter, I had leverage. Guilt I could manipulate. Consequences I could threaten. Information is power, and I hoarded it like gold. She paused. But I'm tired of hoarding. Tired of games. And I owe my son better than to let him suffer when there's no actual impediment to his happiness. Amara stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, Gabriel was showing his instructor something on his canvas, his expression animated in a way she'd rarely seen. Her brother, her full brother, genetically speaking, though they shared a mother and not a father. Does Damien know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Claudia joined her at the window. He'll be devastated, of course. He'd just begun to accept you as his daughter, begun to imagine a future where he could make amends for abandoning you. Learning you're not his blood will hurt him deeply. But Gabriel is his son. Yes, Gabriel is unquestionably his. 1 child instead of 2, but still more than he allowed himself to hope for. Claudia's reflection in the glass was pensive. The question is, what do you want to do with this information? Amara turned to face her. What do you mean? Do you want to tell Ethan? Pursue a relationship with him now that there's no genetic barrier? Or do you keep this quiet, let him continue believing you're forbidden, and move on with your life? Claudia's gaze was penetrating. Because I'll support whatever you decide. This information is yours to do with as you wish. I won't weaponize it further. Why? Amara demanded. Why give me this choice? Why stop playing your games now? Claudia was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant. Because I see myself in you, she finally said. The calculation, the strategy, the willingness to burn everything down if it means winning. I've spent 34 years playing that game, Amara, and I've won every battle while losing the war. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to wake up at 60 and realize you built an empire of ashes. She turned to leave, then paused at the library door. There's one more thing. Victor confessed to something during FBI interrogation, apparently hoping for a reduced sentence. Claudia's voice was tight. He admitted to paying off certain officials at Gabriel's facility to keep him isolated, dependent. He wanted Gabriel to trust only him, to have no other connections. Part of his insurance policy. Amara's hands clenched. What kind of officials? Therapists who reported false assessments. Staff who lost letters Gabriel tried to send. Even Claudia's jaw tightened. Even a doctor who prescribed unnecessary medications to keep him more docile, more compliant. The rage that flooded through Amara was incandescent. He drugged my brother? For years. Gabriel's doctor has been adjusting his medication since he came here. Apparently, most of what he was taking was completely inappropriate for his actual needs. Victor wanted him dependent and confused, easier control. Claudia's expression was cold fury. I may be manipulative, Amara, but I draw the line at abusing vulnerable people. Victor will pay for that. I'll make certain of it. In that moment, Amara understood that Claudia Cross was indeed capable of care. It was just selective, calculated, and expressed through vengeance rather than warmth. Thank you, Amara said quietly, for telling me. All of it. Claudia nodded once and left. Amara stood alone in the library, holding information that could change everything, staring out at her brother who painted roses and saw auras and remembered being loved. And she had no idea what to do next. Amara found Ethan in the conservatory that evening, surrounded by the exotic plants his mother kept but never tended. He was sitting on a stone bench beneath a twisting vine that produced flowers the color of bruises, purple bleeding into green, exactly as Gabriel had described his aura. "Can we talk?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, and the hope that flashed across his face before he could suppress it nearly broke her. Of course. She sat beside him, careful to leave space between them, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. The conservatory's humidity made the air thick, made breathing feel like an effort. "Your mother told me something today," Amara began, and then the whole story spilled out. The DNA test, Marcus Henderson, the truth about her parentage. She watched Ethan's face cycle through disbelief, confusion, and finally a desperate, fragile hope that he tried to hide but couldn't quite manage. "So we're not." He couldn't finish the sentence. "We're not siblings. Not half, not any kind." Amara's hands twisted in her lap. "Gabriel is Damien's son. I'm not his daughter. We share no biological connection beyond the fact that my twin brother is your half-brother, which makes us... I don't even know what that makes us." "It makes us not related," Ethan said, and his voice cracked on the words. "It makes us possible." The word hung between them, shimmering with possibility and danger in equal measure. "Does it?" Amara asked quietly. "After everything I did? After I came here planning to destroy your father? Using you as a weapon? After I lied to you for months?" "You fell in love with me," Ethan said, and it wasn't a question. "Somewhere between the calculation and the revenge, you actually fell in love with me. I know you did, because I felt it happen. I watched you fight it, watched you hate yourself for it, watched it terrify you." Amara's vision blurred with tears. "I did. God help me, I did. And then when I thought we were siblings, when I thought I destroyed us with my own schemes, I wanted to die from the loss of you." Ethan reached for her hand tentatively, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers laced through hers, warm and familiar, and right in a way that made her chest ache. "So what do we do?" he asked. "Start over? Pretend the last 6 months didn't happen and try again." "I don't think we can pretend any of it didn't happen." Amara turned to face him fully. "I think we have to acknowledge all of it, the lies and the love, the manipulation, and the genuine connection. I think we have to decide if we can build something real on a foundation that started as fiction." "I want to try," Ethan said immediately. "I know I should probably be angry, should tell you to leave and never come back. But I can't. I don't want to. When I thought I'd lost you, not just to the sibling revelation, but to the possibility that you'd never really cared at all, it felt like losing gravity, like floating off into space with nothing to anchor me." "I care," Amara whispered. "I care so much it terrifies me." I came here for revenge and found a family instead, broken and strange and nothing like what I imagined, but family. And I found you, the one person who sees me, really sees me and doesn't flinch. Ethan cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb brushing away her tears. Then let's try. Let's figure out together. No more lies, no more games. Just us being honest and messy and real. Just us. Amara agreed, and when he kissed her, it felt like coming home and starting new simultaneously. They told Damien the truth the next morning, in his study with Gabriel and Claudia present as witnesses. Amara had insisted Gabriel be there. He deserved to know, deserved to be part of the decisions that shaped their makeshift family. Damien took the news like a physical blow, sinking into his chair with his face in his hands. Not my daughter, he whispered. All this time, and you're not. Does it matter? Gabriel asked suddenly, his voice cutting through Damien's grief. He'd been drawing throughout the conversation, his pencil moving in steady rhythms. But now he looked up. She's still my sister. We still shared Mama. We still grew up apart because of choices you made. The DNA doesn't change the consequences. The simple truth of it silenced everyone. Gabriel returned to his drawing, apparently satisfied with his contribution. He's right, Amara said quietly. I'm not your biological daughter, but the abandonment still happened. My mother still suffered. Gabriel still grew up without a father because you chose comfort over courage. The DNA doesn't absolve you of that. I know. Damien's voice was rough. I don't expect absolution. I don't deserve it. But Gabriel, he looked at his son, I want to be your father now, if you'll let me. I want to learn who you are, what you need, how you experience the world. I want to make up for lost time, even though I know I never truly can. Gabriel considered this, his head tilting as he processed. I'd like that, he said finally, but I need you to understand something. I'm not broken. My brain works differently, not wrong. If you're going to be my father, you need to accept me as I am, not try to fix me into who you think I should be. I promise, Damien said, and there was something like hope in his voice. I'll learn. I'll try. His voice broke. I'll be better than I was. Claudia stood, smoothing her skirt. Well, now that we've established the actual family structure, let's discuss practicalities. Damien, I'll have my lawyers draw up divorce papers. Clean separation, fair division of assets. We'll both walk away with our dignity and enough money to drown in. Agreed, Damien said without hesitation. Gabriel needs a proper legal guardian established, Claudia continued. Damien, I assume you'll petition for guardianship? If Gabriel wants that, Damien looked at his son. Would you be comfortable with me as your legal guardian? Gabriel set down his pencil. Only if Amara is co-guardian. I need her too. She understands me in ways you're still learning. Amara's breath caught. Gabriel, Please, he said simply. You're my twin, my other half. I was incomplete without you. I need you close. Of course, Amara managed through tears. Of course I'll be your co-guardian. Nothing could keep me from you now. Claudia nodded approvingly. Then we'll arrange that legally. Amara, you'll need proper housing. The Brooklyn apartment won't do if you're sharing custody. I suggest a townhouse on the Upper West Side that Damien owns, but never uses. 3 bedrooms, accessible layout, near good medical facilities if Gabriel needs them. I can't accept. Amara started, but Claudia cut her off. Consider a back payment for the child support Damien should have been providing all these years. Even if you're not biologically his, he still bears responsibility for your mother's suffering. This is him beginning to make amends. She looked at Damien. Isn't it? Yes. Damien said immediately. Anything you need, Amara, housing, education funds, whatever helps you build a life. Amara looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. This was her choice, her future to decide. Okay, she said finally. The townhouse. For Gabriel and me, but I'm paying utilities and maintaining it myself. I won't be completely dependent. Fair enough, Claudia agreed. 3 months later, Amara stood in the kitchen of the Upper West Side townhouse. making breakfast while Gabriel painted and converted studio they'd set up in the spare bedroom. Ethan had stayed over, something he did more often than not now, and was currently attempting to make pancakes with varying degrees of success. They're supposed to be round, Gabriel called from his studio, somehow aware of the pancake situation despite not being in the room. They're abstract circles, Ethan called back. Artistic interpretation. That's not how geometry works, Gabriel replied, but there was humor in his voice. Amara smiled, flipping bacon with practiced ease. This domestic and ordinary, and nothing like the revenge fantasy she'd once harbored, was happiness. Complicated, messy, built on a foundation of pain and mistakes, but real. Her phone buzzed with a text from Damien. Picking Gabriel up at 2 for therapy. The museum? He mentioned wanting to see the Impressionist exhibit. She typed back. He'd love that. Don't let him spend 3 hours staring at only the Monet water lilies. He needs to see the full exhibit. Noted. How are you? Amara paused, considering the question. 3 months ago, she would have had no answer or a bitter one. Now, good. Really good. And she meant it. Damien had been true to his word, attending every therapy session with Gabriel, learning his needs and boundaries, building a relationship slowly and carefully. They'd never be a traditional father and son, but they were finding their own rhythm. Gabriel called him Damien instead of Dad, but the affection in his voice when he said it was genuine. Claudia had moved to her place in Paris and reported via occasional emails that she was obscenely content. The divorce had been finalized with minimal drama, and she'd started a consulting firm helping other women extract themselves from marriages built on convenience rather than love. It was very Claudia, practical, strategic, and secretly empowering. Victor Hale was serving 15 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Amara had attended the sentencing, watching as the man who controlled her brother for years was led away in handcuffs. Gabriel hadn't wanted to attend, but he'd drawn a picture that day. Chains breaking, a bird flying free. That said everything he needed to say. Marisol had tried reaching out twice. Emails that went unanswered, a letter that Amara had burned without reading. Some bridges, once burned, didn't deserve rebuilding. Breakfast is ready, Amara announced, carrying plates to the small dining table. Gabriel emerged from his studio, paint splattered and content. Ethan followed with his plate of abstract pancakes, grinning sheepishly. They sat together. This family they built from broken pieces and second chances. I finished a new piece, Gabriel said, pouring syrup with mathematical precision. It's about reconciliation. The way things that seem impossible can become possible if you're willing to change perspective. Can we see it? Ethan asked. Gabriel nodded and disappeared back into his studio, returning with a canvas that made Amara's breath catch. The painting showed a shattered mirror reassembling itself, but the reflection it showed wasn't the same as before. It showed people who looked different, arranged differently, connected by new lines of silver that resembled the engraving on Celine's bracelet, the bracelet that Amara now wore every day. In the reflection, a family, not traditional, not simple, but together, healing. It's beautiful, Amara whispered. It's us, Gabriel said simply. Broken things being fixed with love and patience. Mama will be proud. Later that afternoon, after Damien had picked up Gabriel for their museum visit, Amara and Ethan walked through Central Park, the autumn leaves returning, painting the world in shade of amber and rust. I've been thinking, Ethan said, his hand finding hers as they walked, about the future, about what we're building. What have you been thinking? That I want to be part of it, not just as your boyfriend, but as family, real family, chosen family. He stopped walking, turning to face her. I know it's early. I know we're still figuring things out. But I also know I want to spend my life with you, helping you raise Gabriel, building something that lasts. Amara's heart hammered. Ethan, I'm not proposing, he said quickly, a smile playing at his lips. Not yet. Not until we've had more time, more healing. But I'm declaring my intentions. I want forever with you, Amara Vera, and I wanted you to know that. She pulled him down for a kiss, pouring everything she couldn't articulate into it, Gratitude and love and hope and the terrifying joy of second chances. Forever sounds good, she said against his lips. Terrifying and messy and probably complicated, but good. The best things usually are, he agreed. They continued walking, and Amara thought about the journey that had brought her here. She'd come to New York planning to destroy a man who'd wronged her mother. Instead, she'd found a brother she'd lost, a father who wasn't her father but was trying anyway, a mother-in-law who became an unlikely ally, and a love that had survived revelation and transformation. Her mother's bracelet glinted in the afternoon sun, June 15th, 1991, a date that had once symbolized a trail but now meant something different, a beginning point, a reminder that love, even when it fails, leaves traces, seeds that might grow into something unexpected. Celine hadn't gotten her forever with Damien, but in dying, in bringing Amara into the world, in loving her children with everything she had, she'd planted seeds for a different kind of forever, one that stretched beyond her lifetime, one that tied together people who should have been strangers but became family instead. Do you think she knows? Amara asked quietly. Mama, do you think she knows how everything turned out? Ethan pulled her closer. Gabriel seems to think so, and I've learned to trust Gabriel's perspective on things. Amara smiled, leaning into him. Yeah, me too. They walked until the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors Gabriel would probably describe as having emotions. Hopeful orange, peaceful purple, the contented pink of new beginnings. And somewhere, Amara liked to think, Celine Vera was watching, proud of her daughter's strength, proud of her son's resilience, proud that love, complicated, imperfect, hard-won love, had triumphed after all. The Cross Empire had fractured, but from its pieces, something better had emerged. Not revenge, but reconciliation. Not destruction, but reconstruction. Not the ending Amara had planned, but the one she'd needed all along. She'd come seeking justice and found family instead. And that, she was learning, was its own kind of victory. What would you have done in Amara's position? Pursued revenge or chosen reconciliation? Share your thoughts below.
Wow, thank you so much for watching. Seriously, your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this video, the biggest way you can show me love and encourage me to keep creating is to hit that like button and subscribe. Takes 1 second, but it makes a huge difference. Speaking of more videos, I've got another exciting one lined up for you. Just click on the next video showing right on your screen now to keep the fun going. See you there.